presupposition is a claim that is assumed to be true but left unstated. Presuppositions are important because they make communication a lot more efficient than it would be if we had to state everything explicitly.
Have you opened the champagne?
Definite noun phrases, ones that start with the, typically presuppose the existence and often the uniqueness of the thing that they mention, in this case, champagne. In this context, the presupposition is probably true, so there's a reasonable answer. The claim that the champagne has been opened is either true or false.
Have you hidden the bear?
Assume that we're looking at a normal living room. There is no bear. What true response can we make? We can't answer yes. That would mean that there would have to be a hidden bear. But we can't answer no either. There's no unhidden bear. We're in trouble because the question carries a presupposition, the existence of a bear nearby, that's false. By the way, a classic example of this is the claim, "The King of France has red hair." Is this claim true? Hard to accept, as there's no French king at all, much less a red-haired one. Or false? Again, hard to accept, as there's also no French king without red hair.
Ellen's husband runs marathons.
There's a presupposition, Ellen has a husband. In this case, the presupposition appears to be true, and then the claim that the husband runs marathons is either true or false.
Bobby's wife runs marathons.
Again, there's a presupposition about the existence of something, this time Bobby's wife. But this time, the presupposition is likely false. So, should we argue that the claim that Bobby's wife runs marathons is true or false?
Did you remember to bring the cake?
Now the presupposition is that some event occurred, that you promised to bring a cake. Let's suppose that's true. Then, what about the claim that you remembered to bring the cake? That claim is either true, you remembered and there's a cake, or false, you didn't remember and there isn't a cake. But what if we presuppose that some event occurred, yet it didn't?
Well, Mr. Aristotle, have you stopped blackmailing the Persians?
But I can't say no. They'll think I'm blackmailing even as we speak. But I can't say yes that I've stopped. Then they'll think I've been a blackmailer.
We have presupposed that some event, in this case blackmail, has occurred. And if that presupposition is false, Aristotle is stuck trying to answer the question.
Frou-Frou is a fancier store than Walmart is.
Comparisons, like this one, carry the presupposition that the second thing is, in fact, comparable to the first. In this case, we're assuming that Walmart is a store. Of course it is. So the presupposition is true, and our claim is either true, perhaps the more likely case, or false.
Popcorn is crunchier than democracy.
This sentence carries the false presupposition that it's possible to measure the crunchiness of democracy. Only physical things have crunchiness. So should we argue that this claim is true or false? Notice that if we negate a sentence, its presuppositions don't change. For example, consider again the King of France has red hair. Its presupposition is that there is a King of France. But now consider the negation of the original claim, namely that the King of France doesn't have red hair. Its presupposition is the same, namely that the required king exists. Let's look at one more. Popcorn is crunchier than democracy. Its presupposition is that democracy is a physical thing whose crunchiness can be measured. Again, consider the original claim's negation, this time that popcorn is not crunchier than democracy. Again, the presupposition hasn't changed. So we've now seen examples of several common kinds of presuppositions. We can presuppose the existence of something. We can presuppose that some event has occurred, or we can presuppose that something has some important property. Let's get back to the problem of assigning truth values to sentences that carry false presuppositions. Are sentences like, "The King of France has red hair," true or false? Philosophers vary in their answers to this question. One option is to say that both the King of France has red hair and its negation, "It's not true that the King of France has red hair," are false. Another option is to say that neither of them has any truth value at all. But do we now have a problem? The first approach appears to get us in trouble with respect to Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction, which tells us that a logical statement cannot be both true and false. Let K be the claim that the King of France has red hair. We've just said that K is false. In standard logic, this means that not K is true. But we've just asserted that not K is false. It can't be both. In the second approach, neither K nor not K has any truth value at all, and we now appear to be in trouble with respect to the law of the excluded middle, which says that a logical statement, such as K, must be true or false. But we have to be careful. The law of the excluded middle says that every logical statement is true or false. The principle of non-contradiction also applies specifically to logical, not English, statements. So one way to view the presupposition issue is that it suggests that the key issue is the mapping between English and logic. What we need to do is to make implicit presuppositions explicit. So, for example, greatly oversimplifying in our choice of predicates, we can translate "the King of France has red hair" into the logical statement, "There exists a King of France, and that person has red hair." Now it's straightforward to assign a truth value to this claim. It's false. Other statements that carry presuppositions can be treated in the same way. For example, we can resolve Aristotle's problem by constructing a reply that makes the implied presupposition explicit. There was a time at which he blackmailed the Persians, but he's not blackmailing them now. Greatly oversimplifying the representation of temporal relationships, we can translate that into logic by writing that there exists a time at which blackmailing was happening and that it isn't happening any longer. Assuming Aristotle's innocence, this statement is then false.